Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Global Taiwan Institute. We appreciate you all braving the sudden downpour and making it out here to listen to what will surely be a very exciting and interesting discussion. My name is Russell Shao. I am the director here at GTI. For those of you who may not be familiar with our organization, GTI is a 501c3 think tank dedicated exclusively to Taiwan policy research and related programs. Our mission is to enhance the relationship between the United States and Taiwan with the world by contributing to a more informed discussion about Taiwan and its people. In pursuit of that mission, we undertake several major programs. They include our bi-weekly Global Taiwan Brief. We just published a special issue this morning, focusing on the various Indo-Pacific strategies of other countries and the synergy with Taiwan New Southbound policy. Public seminars, the annual symposium in the fall, scholarship and fellowship opportunities, and as well as 3 podcasts at GTI. So if you're not already subscribed to receive our updates, you may do so by visiting our website at www.globaltaiwan.org. Now, let's begin today's program. In an era of growing digital threats to national security, resilience is essential not only for sustaining democracies, but also for safeguarding communication and computer systems, as well as the links between them. To take the definition that was just provided in a report published by CSIS this morning, focusing on strengthening resilience in Taiwan. Resilience refers to the will and ability of a country, society, and population to resist, mitigate, and recover from external pressure, influence, or potential invasion, as well as non-geopolitical threats. Now, the focus of our discussion today is on digital resilience. And digital resilience requires not just capacity in hardware, which is oftentimes what we focus on, looking at communications links, satellites, and so forth, but also software, that's people. And that needs to be reinforced by strategic international partnerships in order to counter the much larger and more powerful authoritarian adversaries that seeks to undermine respective resiliency. Drawing on the lessons from Ukraine's wartime experiences, our really spectacular panel will explore Taiwan's pivotal role in fostering digital resilience, as well as its own efforts to enhance its digital resilience. Our panel today will examine initiatives like Taiwan's Whole Society Defense Resilience Committee that was just stood up earlier this year by President Lai Ching-te, which also prioritizes digital resilience as one of its key line of efforts, as well as most pertinently to our discussion today, the critical role of Taiwan's civil society in advancing digital diplomacy and resilience during peacetime and, God forbid, during wartime. The panelists today will also address key steps that Taiwan can take to enhance its digital resiliency and how the United States, allies, and partners, like-minded partners, can collaborate to bolster these efforts. Allow me now to just briefly introduce our speakers in the order in which they will be speaking. Our featured speaker today is to my immediate left, Ms. Jiayou Guo. She is the founder and president of the Taiwan Digital Diplomacy Association, an independent NGO focused on increasing Taiwan's digital diplomacy as well as resiliency. She also serves as a member of the Whole Society Defense Resiliency Committee, as mentioned earlier, established by the Office of the President of the Republic of China, Taiwan, and also serves on the board of Radio Taiwan International. She also serves as a consultant on the Human Rights Committee of the Ministry of the Interior. Next to her left, we have Libby Lang, who is the Director of Intelligence at the Special Competitive Studies Project. Prior to SCSP, Libby had worked as an intel analyst at Graphica, where she focused on Chinese state-linked influence operation and public health misinformation. She also spent quite a deal of time in Taiwan, working actually as a speechwriter and communications manager for the former Taiwanese president, Tsai Ing-wen. Next to her, we have another special guest. I mean, they're all special, but nevertheless, it's great to have Bolsana Benediva. Excuse me if I've accidentally butchered that, but she is an adjunct professor at Georgetown University and a leading expert in tech policy and digital government transformation. She, from 2019 to 2023, served actually as the Director General at Ukraine's Ministry of Digital Transformation, where she had spearheaded strategic initiatives and various apps that have revolutionized e-government services there in Ukraine. She's also the author of a really excellent study focused on digital resiliency during wartime and the lessons from Ukraine's devastating experience, but certainly one that is inspiring in many ways. And so really looking forward to her input in our discussion about lessons from Ukraine for Taiwan. Last but not least, we have Adam King. He is the Regional Director for East Asia and the Pacific over at the International Republican Institute. He has worked at IRI for many years in various capacities, and now leads the team over there for the East Asia and the Pacific. He has focused in his line of work on civil society, strengthening civil society, elections, media freedom, and really we are very fortunate to have his expertise to really sort of bring in the perspective about how the United States can help more broadly facilitate Taiwan's connection with other countries in the region in this area of digital resiliency. I've asked each of them to prepare a brief opening comments about the various topics on this issue. And then after which I will moderate a discussion for our audience members here, both in person as well as online. We do want to hear from you. So we will reserve around 15 minutes or so at the end of the session to take audience questions. For those of you watching online, you may engage and present your questions by sending an email to contact@globaltaiwan.org. Again, that is contact, CONTACT, at globaltaiwan.org. Please include your name as well as your affiliation. Those that do will be prioritized in the line of questions. So with that, let me turn it over to Jayo.
Hello, everyone. Today, thank you for all of your interest being here. To speak up, I can do. Sorry, my volume is a bit low. Thank you for all of you showing your interest being here. And today I'm going to give a brief introduction about what are the mission of the Open Society Defense Committee of the Presidential Office in Taiwan. Firstly, I would like to introduce a bit about my association, Taiwan Digital Diplomacy Association. We are an independent NGO. In the past 2 years, we have trained citizens and hold workshops to cultivate citizens become like content creator, content creator during the wartime. And we also have done some case study about Ukraine-Russia war, about how Ukrainian citizens and civil society cooperate with the government to communicate with the general public and internationally during the wartime. We have published a few reports, handbooks, and also host community workshops. And in today's sharings, I would like to share some observations about what are the main in Taiwan we are facing now regarding to civil defense. The first problem I would like to bring up here would be Because for now, the civil defense, we don't really have a department in charge of civil defense. So that's why our presidential office established the whole society defense committee this September. For now, if we talk about the civil defense, we only have our defense mobilization department under the Ministry of National Defense. And because Ministry of National Defense now is the only one institution in charge of civil defense. So their training, their strategy for civil defense basically is physical or civil force training. It doesn't include digital skills or disinformation or hybrid war training. And the all-out defense mobilization, as our organization, we also see that their database is very limited because the database about the national defense ministries, they all come from 20 to 50 males when they do military service. So when they are doing the strategy or they are thinking about how to do the network of civil defense, they only have data about our male citizens, 20 to 50. So, and some of them are very out-of-based because they only register when they were like 18 to 20. So it's one of the problems. And the second problem I see here is that even in Taiwan, in all the high school, we have military instructors in high school. And we also have military training class in our high school. But the military training in Taiwan is very traditional. Yeah. Like, for example, as my personal experience when I was in high school was in high school we have to learn how to shoot. And the shooting class, we only have 2 classes. And I got 5 bullets. That's all I got for my whole experience in my high school. And the military training class in Taiwan is more like teaching you how to integrate into a group, like how to march or how to sing the military song or how to follow the rules, I would say. So the military training class in Taiwanese high school is not really practical or helpful for us to encounter real situation. And it is kind of related to the first problem because all the strategy or the training system are designed by our Ministry of National Defense. So it's very traditional for the there now is not really updated. And the third problems I see here would be because as we can see in the Russia-Ukraine war, like for today's war is hybrid warfare. Hybrid warfare is very complicated. You have to have civil force defense abilities, but also you have to have like digital skills. Like internet might be the new battlefield for hybrid warfare. So for the new hybrid warfare, I don't really think our society is ready for encounter the situation. So we had some discussion in Taiwanese civil society recently. That's why the presidential office can maybe they can organize a committee to rebuild the network or establish a communication platform for industry, civil society, and also the government sectors. And the purpose of this committee is to keep the society under normal operation during the wartime or under extreme natural disaster. So in the discussion, we don't only discuss about wartime scenarios, we also talk about how should the civil society, government, and industry collaborate together under natural disaster. And the meeting of the committee will happen every 3 months. We just have once. It has 3 months, which is once will happen. Next one is December, and this committee have like 27 members, like 4 advisors and 23 members from civil society, industry, and also Taiwanese governments. Like this committee are trying to develop a strategy to do self-protections and also respond to various disasters and risks. And there are 5 different departments of this committee. And the first department would be the Civil Force Defense Training. There are many civil organizations who already are doing like civil force defense training are in this department. Civil force defense training like Kuma Academic or for World Alliance, Global Taiwan. So their founders or CEO are in the Department of Civil Force Defense Department. And the second department would be strategic material preparation and critical supply distribution. These sectors, they mainly focus on how to collaborate with some merchandise companies, also distribute like supply chain distribution or logistic company, like how to distribute all the supplies during the wartime. So the government are working with some companies to join this department to negotiate about how to arrange the logistic. And the third department will be energy and critical infrastructure operation and maintenance. Energy and critical infrastructure operation mainly the members mainly are from the governments, and there are some energy companies that are also in this department. Because Taiwan's we know we are an island, like our energy and all the infrastructure are actually very vulnerable. So we have to think about strategy about how to keep the energy and our infrastructures during the wartime. So we have this department. And the fourth department will be social welfare, medical care, evacuation, facility readiness. This department mostly consists of civil organizations because this department is focused on how to provide medical care and how to like have like food supply and also how civil society can collaborate with the government to provide on-time medical care. Because there are also rural areas in Taiwan, we don't have so many hospitals or medical workers. So some civil organizations and the government they negotiate how to distribute the human resources for here. And the last department would be like information, transportation, and financial network. I'm doing this department, and in this department, there are some government institutions are involved as well. Because like for Taiwan, the internet and transportation network and financial network actually is very developed. But this is the first time we are discussing about how to transfer between the peacetime and wartime. So this department, we focus more on the transition about peacetime and wartime. And I would say my contribution in this department is that I suggest Taiwanese government to be more prepared for the public communication during the wartime. For example, we can see that during the Ukraine-Russia war, the Ukrainian government, they hired a PR company to help them develop public communication strategy to the international world and also to the general public. And their Foreign Affairs Ministry also have 2 versions of the websites, and they launched the wartime version immediately after the war just happened. So we can see that their government actually was preparing before the war about the communication strategy, and they also have prepared a lot of media content beforehand. So my main advice for Taiwanese government I participated in this meeting would be I suggest the Taiwanese government should be more prepared for the content for those extreme situations. Yeah, so I'll just be very short because my introduction is very brief, but the last thing I would like to mention is that the digital skills and physical skills are equally important under hybrid warfare. And we hope the Taiwanese society and also our international alliance would have would invest some resources about research about how Taiwan can collaborate better or how to develop our digital and physical skills together, not just mainly focus on physical civil defense skills. And the second would be, the public communication in Taiwan now. We focus more on the like internal communication. Like people in government think about how to do social media communication or how to communicate the civil defense concept to to domestic people. But we hope that international communication can also be considered by Taiwanese government. Taiwanese government should develop a better international communication strategy, maybe to build more media channels or media partnership with international world, or maybe they should seek for to strengthen the network about global partnership. And public communication, we see it important not only by association focused on this field, it's also because Taiwan is really need international support if we are in a war situation. The international support might be the only chance for Taiwan to survive or to keep our position on the wartime. So I hope Taiwanese government would invest more resources on the international communication strategies. And the last point of my presentation would be I hope it's not only the whole society collaboration is not only is important, but domestic and international collaboration is also important for Taiwan civil defense. I hope maybe we will have more chance for the think tanks in Taiwan or maybe in the US will have more chance to share their views together about civil defense or maybe national security. And also we hope there will be more maybe online events or more opportunities for people to do exchange or to share their opinions together. It will help Taiwanese society understand better about why it is important to seek for international partnership. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jayo. I think that was a great overview about the Taiwan's Whole Society Defense Resilience Committee. And it's good to know also that there will be another meeting slated for this committee sometime this month also as well, given that it was just held in September earlier this year. Hopefully, you can draw from the discussion that we'll have today and private discussions to help inform those deliberations, because I think it's so critically important that, as we talk about resiliency, we have to think about not just about hardware, but software also as well. And that's perhaps even the hardware more time consuming part of building capacity. I think what your organization is doing in trying to prepare the population more resilient is precisely the type of efforts that need to go in during peacetime. Should again, Xi Jinping decide to roll that dice and take that, make that a word choice to invade and aggression against Taiwan. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Libby. Libby, over to you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Russell. And thank you everyone for being here. I'm Libby Lang, Director for Intelligence at Special Competitive Studies Project. And at SCSP, we're basically focused on making recommendations for the US and allies partners, focused on keeping us secure and competitive in a world where emerging technologies are basically changing kind of the fabric of the world we live in, right? And so I'm really excited to be here to talk about this because I do think that digital resilience, digital freedom are really major parts of that, but often don't appear in the same conversations as sort of broader national security, even though I think that they should be. And so I've been asked to focus specifically on technological tools for digital resilience and digital freedom. Of course, if I were to sort of give the laundry list, I could probably talk for 30 minutes. So I'll just touch on a few technologies, and we can go back in the Q&A maybe. But I think first it would probably be helpful to sort of set the stage for why this is important and why we were talking about this in 2024. I think nobody here will be surprised to hear that the digital world is not doing so hot in 2024, right? I think Freedom House said that this is the 14th year in a row that global internet freedom actually declined. We're seeing repressive regimes around the world continue to try to sort of shut down their information spaces and insulate their populations from that free flow of information that we're so used to. Even kind of the physical infrastructure that underpins the digital world is really under threat. We've seen undersea cables that are responsible for, sending data around the world cut everywhere from the Baltic Sea to outlying islands around Taiwan, with really serious impacts there. And so I think that, there's a real kind of urgency to this question in 2024. And I think I really like what Russell said actually about how you need sort of that kind of government, putting a lot of emphasis on this in the way that Taiwan has with this new committee, but you also can't be missing that piece of sort of civil society and how people in their own capacities are involved in this question. And I think that there are some really encouraging and valuable lessons to learn from Taiwan on that front. Taiwan has an incredibly active civil society community around these questions of digital resilience and freedom. You have Be Taiwan. If you've never heard of it, it's an online consultation platform where people with kind of differing opinions on policy issues can come together and discuss those issues in a more sort of neutral setting and find kind of a common denominator, sort of what is the most basic thing they can agree on in terms of that policy, to find policy positions that can then be proposed to policymakers to actually get things done and help people feel that they're involved in that policy making. And actually a really cool example is I think later this month, there's going to be a consultation on how Taiwan should regulate AI. So bringing real people, what do they want to see? What they want to see the rules and guardrails around AI, and where are they concerned with that? You have organizations like Doublethink Labs, which are trying to track and expose how adversaries, particularly China, are trying to infiltrate Taiwan's information space and sort of get at that question of how do you make sure your society is ready to resist hybrid warfare, sort of things that are not as easily visible, right? And then finally, at the broader societal level, of course, you have the whole society defense resilience community, and kind of setting the direction for sort of maybe where society can focus its efforts, but letting that develop freely at the same time. And so in terms of sort of turning towards the technologies, I think it's helpful to kind of separate them into two buckets, right? You have your physical technologies, sort of things you could touch in the real world, and then you have your digital. And so in the physical world, I think, the one technology I really like to highlight today would be, satellite networks that are providing internet and broadband. I think that obviously, the experience of Ukraine has really highlighted how crucial that is, and how, having that stopgap measure to keep people connected to others, to keep governments connected to the people, is really important, whether it's, a geopolitical event or whether it's a natural disaster. And I think that Taiwan's government is very aware of that, but at the same time, you don't just get satellite technology, it just come out of nowhere, right? It's not something that you can develop and launch quickly because it is a hardware and software problem. And so I think Taiwan's two-pronged approach here again is a really interesting lesson for us to learn, right? For the time being right now, they're working with a European satellite company to get internet access, or starting immediately. I think actually it may have, maybe connected this month. So people in Taiwan will have access this month. But at the same time, their space agency is looking to develop its own satellite technologies that hopefully will be launched 2025, 2026. And so I think sort of being able to think in the near and longer term is really like one of the key things when we think of digital resilience that sort of makes it sustainable, right? It's not, the situation that we're facing right now at the moment. It's being able to think into the future and what might we need in any of the potential futures, 5, 10 years down the line. And so moving, I guess, from the physical technologies into kind of the digital world, I think just a couple things I'll highlight, I'm thinking of already closed or closing information spaces. This might sound kind of old to talk about now, but thinking of things like VPNs, circumvention technologies, and secure messaging, right? I think those are really important to get people trained up on, to make sure they have access on, but I actually think kind of one disclaimer I would add is that I think we kind of need to move beyond the paradigm of if we build it, they will come. If we give people access to a VPN, they will automatically want to access information that they didn't have access to before. There's good research out of China that actually might not be the case, that just having a VPN by itself might not actually change your information consumption habits. There needs to be sort of more that goes along with that, right? I think actually, from our end, from the US's end, kind of re-evaluating our communication strategies and thinking about how we're actually trying to reach the target audiences that we want to talk to, and if those are actually succeeding. It's 2024, it's almost 2025. This is a very content-driven world, right? People are going to engage with what they find engaging. And so taking a step back and looking at how we're communicating, I think, is just as, maybe if not more important than providing people with the technologies to reach our content. And then finally, just given SCSP's focus on AI, I think I do kind of need to touch on AI just a bit, because I think it kind of runs the gamut across the physical, the digital. It's a tool, it's an attack surface, it's kind of everything. And so I think one of the really exciting things about AI is that it has kind of the potential to be very democratizing for information, right? It's like quite literally puts the collective knowledge of the world at people's fingertips. But that's not always the case, right? Not all AI models are kind of created with that ethos of wanting people to access information freely in sort of whatever way they choose. So, there are models developed under authoritarian regimes are naturally going to kind of conform to the worldview that those regimes deem appropriate, right? And I think there's a potential future where, historical events and perspectives are kind of digitally erased from our collective memory because they're not present in those models. And so I think making sure that people around the world have access to models that sort of present a whole picture and an entire perspective of an incident is going to be really important, just sort of ensuring access at a very basic level. But at the same time, I also do want to say that AI has the potential to really supercharge our defenses as well when it comes to digital resilience, when it comes to digital freedom. And I can say that kind of from personal experience. Prior to working at SCSP, I was researching for malign influence operations sort of professionally. I was doing this in my everyday life, and I can say that we would not have been able to sort of track that kind of activity and expose it at the scale or the level of accuracy we did without, these capabilities that really only AI can give us, because at the end of the day, our adversaries are going to use it against us, and it's going to scale their operations and make them more difficult to detect. And if we kind of just don't want to use those technologies sort of on the defensive, I think we're kind of just destined to fall behind. And so I just, I would encourage, I know there's quite a bit of skepticism, quite a bit of fear in terms of sort of the impacts of AI on our democracy, but just, I guess, from sort of a personal experience, I think it's been, it can be very empowering. And so, yeah, I know I covered a lot of stuff very quickly, but that was, a very broad swath of technologies to talk about. And I think that just kind of goes to show sort of how all-encompassing these issues can be when you take a step back and think more broadly. But I'm happy to get more into it in the Q&A.
Fantastic, that's superb, Libby. A reminder that when we think about infrastructure, and you cover that a great deal, is that there's a physical infrastructure, but there's also another aspect of the people, the organizations, and the networks that are important in that infrastructure and having that in place in order to have a more resilient response to this type of aggression that we expect from the PRC in the event in multiple scenarios. Osana, I'll turn it over to you. Please provide.
Thanks so much. The same, it's like 10 minutes, so I will try to cover and touch. So sorry for being maybe a little bit fragmented and puzzled, but I want to bring in this 10 minutes. Yes, a huge experience of Ukraine like this, being already around 3 years in the full scale war, but we have to remember that Russia attacked Ukraine in 2014, occupying Crimea, and it's my home, Crimea, from originally from Crimea, so it's for me, like particularly for my family, the war is already there for 10 years. The first thing that I would try to emphasize, like to structure the wartime related experience of Ukraine in digital in several pieces. So first is civilian efforts and building digital government, how it helped us to be, continue function, and also military efforts. Of course, it's the most technological war in the human history in terms of using technology on the battlefield along with kinetic warfare. I will also emphasize the innovation and speed importance in what's happening in Ukraine on the battlefield and generally touch a little bit like misinformation, disinformation. So I want to speak about like many things, but what AI actually playing what the role of AI in Ukraine in the humanitarian efforts and also military forces. It's very much developing now. So speaking about efforts, civilian digital resilience, the Ukraine were lucky to introduce robust digital public infrastructure and making this central effort of the government, of the Zelensky government, building ecosystem called DIA. We have government super app, digital documents, digital ID, digital payments, really robust data interoperability system between the registries and the ministries. Ukrainians pay taxes in 2 clicks, submit standard declaration in like 2 minutes, apply for the benefit assistance, really like it's again 2 clicks and everything in your phone. So it's a whole philosophy and reconsideration how government is interacting with the citizen in digital era. So we were lucky to being able to place this on the national scale before COVID. During the COVID, we were able to test the solutions in the unknown environment, and for example, we were already using digital tools for administrating vaccines, for their for the COVID certificates, and it's really showed us how digital and the whole world, how digital infrastructure is helpful during the humanitarian, like this kind of crisis, and it's allowed Ukraine probably to prepare for their much bigger challenge. When the full-scale invasion started, was having this already digital capability inside the government, we were able to administrate again the assistance to citizens who are evacuating from the hotspot in as soon as 3 days, and or we launched the social benefit assistance in 3 days, and we received like 1 million application in the first day. This is unprecedented numbers in terms of like how speed and how fast government is reacting and supporting citizens. So we were able, I'm just emphasizing that we were able to continue operations of the government and didn't stop to work even for a second while the bombs were falling from the sky. And it's really important lesson that we would not be able to continue operate without this infrastructure, the digital public infrastructure. And part of this, we were also able not just continue, but launched war-related services at Citizens Smith, as I mentioned already, social benefit assistance for those who are evacuating or registering as internally displaced person, or register damaged property and apply for the compensation. The new service that we are very proud launched, Marriage Online. It's the first service in the world where people can marry totally online without need to. Unfortunately, it's a very popular service, and it's like in need because families are separated. Men are on the front line, women are abroad, for example, with their children, and they're not registered. So there's a lot of legal challenges families can face. So we were continue to launch very in agile way services that are, we called it like war-related or that are more in need. And it's not something that you plan 1, 2, 3 years ago. It's really something that you have team and capability inside the government that are able to react fastly. So I have been in government from 2019. I could not imagine that we would be able to launch service on the whole nation in 3 days. That's very important lesson, I think, to developing this internal government capability. If you rely on private sector and procure all the digital government services, that would not be possible. Yes, when you instead of like having this procurement muscle. The other one, the aspect that I wanted to the military efforts that were also Ukraine were like able to. You probably have heard about tool Evorok. It's a tool that allows Ukrainians in occupied territory to submit information about Russian forces, military forces or weapons directly to the armed forces of Ukraine. And because we have DIA, we assure that only Ukrainian citizens are able to use this tool. So it's crowd surveillance. It's really effective tool to understand the situation, what's happening in the occupied territories. Again, very fastly launched. Ukraine were able to transfer critical and sensitive data to the cloud in 2 weeks after the full-scale invasion. It should be done before. It was also very hard to find a consensus inside the government because it's, again, national security, digital sovereignty, but when the real crisis happened, then the consensus was found very easily that we need to use cloud and relocate all sensitive data abroad, relying on the big tech companies. So there's a lot of questions that comes after this, but this is what's happening now. And for Ukraine, digital sovereignty today means literally ability to work with partners and to rely on our partners. Of course, technology, as I mentioned before, this is the most technological war apart. So there is a conventional weapons. Yes, there's a lot of artillery and shelling, but we see the tactics. And every time when, especially in the beginning of full-scale invasion, when Russia attacks specific region, they combine it with attacks on the infrastructure of the government agency, disrupting their ability to communicate, and so on. So this is an important lesson, but then the one aspect, I mean, it's supporting my first thesis to secure data and to think about what and how you will communicate and what is like digital sovereignty means in this time of crisis. And moving to the MilTech, just to give you numbers, in the beginning of full-scale invasion, Ukraine has 6 models of drones, military drones of different functions, like surveillance drones, combat drones, and so on. Today, we have 67 models produced in Ukraine. The production really arose, it's exponential rise. And Ukraine is able to procure contract, for example, in this year, we contracted 1.5 million drones domestically produced. Ukraine is generally able to produce more than around 4 million drones. And that shows how industry reacting fastly, but also government change the procurement strategies and contracting rules. That I think the Western countries should learn from, because all these procurement long procedures would not allow to enhance and change the direction of some vectors of the defense capability if you have, procurement procedure 6 months. Now we do from I would say the procurement procedure could last for about 2 weeks, even shorter. This happens when you are in the crisis, and innovation and speed is really decisive. So I want to emphasize this innovation and speed approach is not really something that you have to, you can prepare and plan ahead, but really change the procedure to allow yourself to be flexible and fast. And the last points probably I will make about the misinformation and disinformation effort that were mentioned before. Personally, I'm not an expert in this, but we were, of course, all in the Ministry of Digital Transformation working on this part as well. But definitely there are many things that could be done better. Ukraine is losing in this part. I will be honest, like not pretending. Russia investing millions of dollars into Russia today, and they're winning Global South. We see the UN Secretary General is coming to the BRICS summit, and like this is happening. We cannot pretend that it's not. And Ukraine is just because Russia still the Soviet Union heritage of the embassies around the world, they are able to provide more and free channels, so they have bigger penetration. We were, in our case, relying more on digital, on social media and digital means. This is effective. We have launched in May 22 the biggest fundraising platform, United 24, United 24 Media. This is a big social, it's a project in social medias and YouTube where we explain in the short, like in the modern style, what's happening in Ukraine, the narrative of Ukraine, narratives, but that was done not in front, not before. It was done in the middle. Government is not able to do this work and create a content, so you have to cooperate with communication agencies and creative agencies that understand the trend, how foreign society and audience consume information. And I'm speaking now about like foreign audience, yes, because it's less work and effort to work with Ukrainian society, because when the bombs are falling from the sky, it's black and white. The Ukrainian society see what's right, what's wrong, and there's, of course, it's all about all news about the war. But real challenge for Ukraine is to provide information and engage and share our narrative of the story with international audience. And the last point, if I have just 1 minute about AI and what's AI is playing a role of AI in Ukraine. The first one, the applicability is humanitarian aid. AI is widely used in the mining efforts because and drone and plus AI technology, and this is saving a lot of lives. And just this is example, yes, where AI is in humanitarian efforts, and of course drone warfare. This is inevitably happening. There's no any regulation in answering us. It's a practice, and the world should see this and ask questions. I think we're just starting very broad. If you know, there was the recent agreement between the president of China and US not to use AI in the nuclear weapon. That's already good. But what the other parts? Yes, and it's already there, and what's implication we have is for the future conflicts and in this unstated war. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Well, a lot of important insights to draw from for Taiwan's case. I think Libby made a point about the importance of scale. I think what you really emphasize also is the vital importance of speed also as well. And scale and speed is one of the two, I think key, sort of attributes that are going to be needed for an effective, resilient, response for resiliency. And I think the point that you made that this Russia's re-invasion of Ukraine in 2022 was a re-invasion because Russia invaded in 2014, and Taiwan cannot wait for 2014 to occur or to galvanize the type of sort of organization and preparation, presumably that Ukraine undertook following that to have such an effective response in what we saw after 2022. So a lot to draw from. I'm sure we're going to get into a lot more of that into the in the discussion. But last, I want to turn it over to Adam, please.
Thanks. Thanks, Russell. So as Russell mentioned, my name is Adam King. I'm from the International Republican Institute. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that focuses on democracy all around the world. So if it's about democracy, that's what we're into. And the main overarching point I want to make from what I'm going to talk about today is that if we want to advance Taiwan's digital resilience, it must become the recognized international leader in the space, but it can't do that alone. So IRI and other organizations with their governments can actually provide help, and that's what I want to talk about. So I first want to note that IRI is not, I am not an expert like these three here, right? I work for an organization that focuses on democracy, and so we will touch upon things like digital resilience, but that is not our bread and butter. So my teams are not downloading metadata from X or Line and parsing through that data and figuring things out like an IORG or a deep doublethink lab, but we will work with organizations like that. We actually, one of our first things we did in Taiwan was working with Graphica. We put out a report around the re-election of Tsai Ing-wen's re-election, looking at the disinformation that was coming out of China. And then actually, we just the election, but because COVID happened and there was a lot of disinformation after the election, we looked at a lot of that as well. So again, I wasn't the one writing that, but I was helping make that all happen. So IRI does have an office in Taipei, and as you probably know, many more organizations are doing that as well. There's a number of NGOs that have offices in Taipei that just 4 or 5 years ago did not. Same with IRI. Our office was in Hong Kong for the China writ large region with Taipei. So we observed firsthand how Taiwan has built digital resilience, and there's a number of ways we've noticed they have done this. They are very good at raising public awareness through advertising and public education. They've created a lot of initiatives to quickly correct the record of false narratives. They work directly with the social and traditional media companies. They've prioritized FIMI, foreign information manipulation and interference investigation with law enforcement. And they've established a whole society defense resilience committee, as was mentioned, that includes experts in FIMI. So these are all really great initiatives. And we are not, as IRI or other NGOs, going to replace the resources of the government, but there are places where we can help. So I want to give a couple examples. The first is we can enhance international cooperation between Taiwan's digital resilience organizations and like-minded partners from other regions. So as I mentioned, IRI has an office in Taipei. We also have offices in over 40 other countries, and we work and have worked in over 100 countries. And so one of the things that I try and focus on is, can we make sure that the partners in Latin America, in Africa, in Southeast Asia, that they're aware of what's going on in Taiwan, the situation, the successes of Taiwan, and can we actually help connect them and make them work together better? One example, about 5 years ago, we provided some of these first, so I was just talking about this partnership with Graphica. We worked with Doublethink Lab, with IORG, and with some other organizations. We were giving them grants, utilizing some of their data. But it was one of their, so they told us, some of their first instances of working directly with international organizations. They had all very strong capabilities already, but they didn't have a lot of experience actually interacting and working on projects exactly like this. And so we gave them some of that introductory experience. Of course, this success did not hinge upon IRI. As you know, Taiwanese organizations are very capable, but we can take what they do and try and expand it and grow it and help them. The second thing is we can build the capacity of new groups working on issues and promote access to these groups in international forums. So similar to what I just said. But one thing IRI has noticed as we've worked around the globe is there's a certain amount of churn always in civil society and these type of organizations. You do have those who have a lot of staying power, but you have new players coming in, you have players leaving the scene. The new players often bring in the new ideas, right? We like, as a creative destruction, it can work in civil society as well. And so basically by bringing in new organizations, helping build those organizations up, you now have new ideas coming in. And so it's not just the same organizations doing the same thing year after year. The third thing is we try to help Taiwan tell its story. So Taiwan's civil society have been proven to be very gifted messengers, but as you probably also know, they are really limited in how they can actually reach out to some people. Right? Just the nature of Taiwan's status globally sometimes puts a bit of a wall for Taiwan in how they're actually able to interact. And when possible, IRI likes to try and circumvent those walls or make introductions or get them into places they wouldn't normally get. The example I like to give is before she was even ambassador to the US or before she was vice president, Chubby Kim was just a member of parliament, and we had her speak to a group of Malaysians at an event that we saw her as someone who was up and coming. So it's just getting people like that. We are always trying to identify strong Taiwanese who we can bring out, take them to different places and get them engaged. So an example I want to give is IRI has recently been working with the political parties, mostly the KMT and the DPP, but we are trying to bring them outside of the country, right? So we took a group of them to Indonesia. We're going to be taking a group hopefully to Malaysia. But the idea is that they're able to do this themselves, but if IRI can kind of pave the way, were able to get that. And the idea is they need to tell the Taiwanese story. They need to make sure that Taiwan is understood better in these places by not just the high-ranking government officials, but people within the parties, people within civil society, so that they can understand. And then if things do turn south, there will be other allies within the region and the globe. The other things we've been doing is we don't just take the Taiwanese out, we try to bring others in. And so we're bringing a lot of Central and Eastern Europeans. We haven't yet brought Ukrainians, but we are looking at doing that. We brought a lot of Central and Eastern Europeans to Taiwan, mostly either members of parliament, security experts, where they're trying to learn the lessons from Taiwan to bring back. Because, there's a lot of Central and Eastern Europeans, even outside of the borders of Ukraine, that are really concerned about Russian aggression. And they want to learn lessons from both Ukraine and Taiwan as well. And then we've also brought Korean activists and others. We're going to be soon bringing journalists from across the Indo-Pacific region into Taiwan. So what we're aiming to do is to build political support for Taiwan and also have people who then return from Taiwan, go back to their regions, such as the journalists, and then report on what is happening in Taiwan so that their publics are a better understanding. And the goal for this is that we want to sort of, I'm trying to think of the word, there's a lot of fertile ground for FEME efforts around the world. And so if we can do anything we can to sort of undermine that fertility and try to make it so the fertile ground doesn't exist, then that hurts the efforts of the Chinese government as they're trying to do those things. We're also trying to empower local media partners to correct false narratives about Taiwan's commitment to defend its democratic way of life, bolstering support on the international stage. I think it was maybe about a year ago, Russell, 6 months ago, you had Xiaoyu from IORG here, and he was talking just about this, I'm trying to remember what he calls the narrative right now, the American skepticism theory, right? Where basically the message is that they are trying to push out the PRC, that the United States will not come to the aid of Taiwan in the event of a crisis. And if Taiwan begins to doubt that, then the people are going to doubt their ability to actually withstand aggression from the PRC. Now, we know the United States has a policy that is not obvious that we would actually provide support. I think most people believe we would, but that strategic ambiguity is a policy that makes sense for the United States. But the point being that Taiwanese citizenry needs to understand why the United States has that policy, and then also what it means in reality for its citizens, because that will help. Because the will to fight is like almost as important as anything, and that's what that is trying to undermine. And so for us, we're going to be bringing journalists, as I mentioned, to Taiwan. And it's for us to help journalists from these regions interact with Taiwanese journalists and work together to try and undermine messages like that. So the final thing is we want to shore up democratic deficits to reduce, as I mentioned, the fertile ground for FEME around the region. So first, as I mentioned, part of the digital resilience is taking away the places where it can take root. And for us, we're looking at political polarization in Taiwan as an issue. Political polarization, we are seeing this in Europe. We're seeing this all over the place. It's a real big issue. And so we think that organizations like IRI, not only IRI, can play a role in trying to, we're never going to stop polarization completely. And actually, as a democracy organization, we don't want that. Democracy is not about everyone agreeing on everything all the time. It is about agreeing so in a civil way where we can actually continue to make progress. And on certain things like national security, we actually generally want to agree on the rules of the road and how to proceed. And so for us, that is where we are trying to engage different actors within Taiwan to say, let's come to the table, let's discuss these things, because that's basically, we're trying to make sure that those rules kind of stick. And I think that we're seeing sometimes they're not. And that provides real fertile ground for FEME efforts. So as I hope you can tell from my remarks, IRI is not IRI is not the only organization that is doing this type of work in Taiwan, but we are very invested in Taiwan. Taiwan is a very important place to us because, one, it's a great place with a lot of people who deserve to be free and have a democratic society and keep all those things that they have. And two, I think actually China deserves the same sort of things. And the example that Taiwan sets as a free society that is more prosperous is a great counterpoint to China, where they also need the same things. So for us, we are really dedicated to Taiwan, to preserving its way of life. We opened our office there for a variety of reasons. But primarily, it was to ensure that we're well networked within Taiwan and able to play a positive role there with all the international efforts. So I'm basically encouraging anyone who is interested in that effort to contact me and let me know, because I'd love to chat.
If I may just draw a thread through, these four excellent presentations is, scale, speed, partnerships, and those are probably three key ingredients, that are, essential, for a more resilient, Taiwan and, apply that to the digital space. And I think we can sort of get an appreciation for the ecosystems that are going to be needed in order to facilitate those three key ingredients to a more resilient Taiwan. Now, I have just a reminder to our audience members here in person as well as online. We do want to hear from you. You are part of this conversation as well. So just we will reserve around 15 minutes at the end of the session to take your questions. So start thinking about what your questions may be for this really, again, just excellent set of presentations here. And reminder for our online viewers, you can send your questions to contact@globaltaiwan.org. Again, that's contact@globaltaiwan.org. Now, I want to exercise the moderator's prerogative here and present a few questions for our panelists. And this first one, I'm going to just present to the entirety of the panel. And just given the timeliness of the topic and the issue at hand, given this whole of society defense resilience committee, if President-elect Xing was in the room today, right now, and, you had to ask him, and he asked you, well, what's the most important thing we need to do, to enhance our digital resilience, what would it be? Well, you certainly, Chayo, you can start first. I mean, you're a member of that committee, and then you are, advising the government there, to address this issue, so.
I would say one should have a specific department, government department in charge of civil defense or digital defense. Because for now, as a civil organization, when we are seeking for resources or communications to Taiwanese government, our experience was like, there's no people or no department that we can really communicate with. All the communication will just stop at some meetings because no one can really escape it. So I would say, if I can give recommendation to Taiwanese government, let's say there should be department or sectors, not only a committee. Committee is not enough. And and I also want to echo to the three speakers. And I think I forgot to introduce our organization a bit, because like what Rosanna has mentioned about THEA or April, we also have done some case study in this handbook, and we sold like 1,800 copies last year to Taiwanese people, because they are very curious about how Ukrainian use digital tools to encounter the difficult situation. And as like the more we do research about Ukrainian government and Ukrainian civil society, how they use digital tool, the more I worry about Taiwanese society, because we are not prepared. We don't have any like organizations or government sectors that are really preparing for the scenario. So when we are doing the handbook, a lot of people approach us, and we sell some copies, and people want to buy in some bookstores. But for now, Taiwanese society is understanding about the digital tools, and during the wartime only stay in the surface. It's not really I would say it's a very early stage. And also like AI is really a new field and new discussion for Taiwanese society as well. We can see some like civil tech group, they are starting to develop some AI tools to help, for example, detecting disinformation or to communicate with the general public. And our association, TPDA, also is collaborating with the civil tech group. We are developing US skepticism AI detecting chatbot. Like what Adam mentioned, like there are a lot of different sayings about how US will abandon Taiwan if it doesn't really happen, or how US is trying to use Taiwan to develop their own semiconductor, and then they will abandon Taiwan after they achieve it. So there are many different things in public society now. And our association, we are going to develop an AI chatbot focusing on the US skepticism next year. It's called US Taiwan Landspot. And we want to target the Gen Z because young people, they are really believing what they see on social media. So we are developing this AI chatbot to help to summarize those articles which includes like US skepticism. Also, the AI chatbot will put the articles into different categories and help the organization who want to do the communication produce social media content, like to tell people why the resources are suspecting and why suspicious, and also how we analyze the paragraph and why this paragraph is related to US skepticism, and what are the alternative or narratives can we take other records. So we are using an AI chatbot to help other organizations to create social media content about to increase media literacy as well. Because we have a discussion about like the Chinese government, they are also using AI to create a lot of propaganda on social media. And Taiwan also used AI to create propaganda to speak for ourselves. But our discussion was maybe it's not ethical. So our alternative solution, it became like we create this AI chatbot to generate some social media content, but it's just for summarizing suspicious articles or to help our organization to generate the social media content more. So this is what we are trying to work on, and I do think Taiwanese government should have a specific department, not only a committee to tackle this digital or hybrid war.
Yeah, you made a really, I think, interesting point there, and much of our discussion right now has been centered again on a defensive, sort of effort in identifying and mitigating, against CCP propaganda and malign influence. But I think it's important to also consider the, for lack of a better word, offensive or proactive aspect of responding to and sort of mitigating the threats posed by PRC propaganda. And I think there's a content element to efforts to try to address this issue that also requires some thinking. And I think to some extent it's going to be interesting to hear. I would be interested to hear Osana's sort of insights with regards to how the Ukrainians have dealt with this, particularly preparation and after the sort of 2014 to be able to more effectively address this issue, because it doesn't. I mean, I presume it didn't just grow organically out of nowhere that Ukraine had this effective response after 2022, and I wonder what preparations and efforts were made following 2014 to get Ukrainians where they are. But let me ask the other panelists to also chime in perhaps a little bit on what you think, again, what would be your top recommendation on how to enhance digital resiliency.
Yeah, I think if I could put it in just a few words,
Okay,
I'd
sure.
say prepare and socialize, right? I think you made such a great point on the preparation front that so much of this is not something you can kind of just, whip up on the back end. Once something has happened, you kind of have to have certain systems in place for them to be resilient when the time comes. But in terms of like socialize, I guess what I mean by that is, really, I think that, there needs to just be a greater effort to sort of socialize the idea among the Taiwanese population, like why they need to be prepared. I remember reading an interview from a Taiwanese journalist earlier this year who was interviewing a sort of civil society group that was doing kind of like civil defense preparedness and things like that in their neighborhood. And basically, one of the quotes that really stuck with me was he was saying, you know, when I want to get the aunties in my neighborhood to join, I tell them, just think of it like a fitness class. You know, just think of it like you're coming to like do jumping jacks to get fit. And that was, you know, that was his sort of solution to how to get people to take this seriously. But I think, you know, helping people understand that if you don't know how to dress a wound, or if you don't know where to evacuate to when the time comes, like that can have really serious consequences. And I don't pretend to have the answer to how you do that without maybe seeming like you're sensationalizing. I'm sure that would be, you know, something that would be, you know, thrown around as well when you're trying to sort of broaden that message out to society. But I do just think kind of getting people in a little bit more into that mindset, is, you know, I think would go a long way on again, on like the general population.
Actually, we don't have a recipe as of we are still in the war, and it's a very difficult situation now. We don't know how this year makes it very decisive in terms of changing administration and the level of support of Ukraine. So it's not really, there is no any winning recipe, but what it's like, in terms of strongly, it's my personal opinion, I strongly believe that we found ourselves in the new global order when we cannot underestimate our own strengths. And that was probably a mistake of Ukraine. We now have a lot of discussion on this, and Ukraine were forced to give or like promised to give, you know, Ukraine had the second biggest nuclear arsenal when Soviet Union collapsed, and there was a Budapest memorandum that Ukraine exchanged nuclear weapon on the promises from the three big countries, including Russia, to help Ukraine to stay in this border and to protect it. But so the lesson, the painful, very painful lesson for Ukraine is we have to invest in our military capability. This couldn't be any more a question. And the small countries that cannot outnumber their enemies, like we can not outnumber Russians, yes, and we can only outsmart them. And technology promise give us this chance. So in terms of practical things, I would say that Ukraine were lucky and we did the right step to build the digital public infrastructure, like that again allowed us to continue civilian operation of the government. But what was probably could be done earlier is building innovation units in the military defense and the military constructions authorities that would be able to prepare or build the systems that allows digitally transform army. Because army is a very complicated structure, very hierarchical, sometimes not agile, and without proper like training and being in the combat field, it's tend to be, you know, very fringed. So this innovations unit would probably provide for again, driving from example of Ukraine, we have it now, and it's provide building systems of awareness that provide information, real-time information to different combat units. Our digital tools for the army, where people, for the general population, where people can apply to be accepted for studying combat unit, or for example, data scientist wants to do data science in army, yeah, but not going to the battle, but like he will be much more useful in this sphere. So this is all like thinking about how you will use human capacity in the smarter way, with the main goal to save lives and let technology, I may say, be on the battlefield rather than people. So we have to think of three nations, three small nations, not that found ourselves in this kind of situation, have to think about this. And I think also it's a time when startup and military tech have its way and word. we just need to provide probably the government role is to provide this platform where general army and the military and the startups and tech would have a connection or kind of accelerator when there will be a very fast loop from the battlefield to the startup to the military technology. So that's probably, it's not very optimistic. I know it's, and I hope that in a couple of years, very soon, we will be able to say this is great lessons from Ukraine, how to win the war. But today there is no probably any more clear answer than to be strong and building your own strengths.
Thank you.
So as I mentioned earlier, I'm not a digital resiliency expert, but I will say that I actually don't fear as much, and maybe I'm naive, invasion from China of Taiwan. I fear blockade. Like, what happens if there's a full, they could do that quickly, I think, full blockade, cut every single cable to the country. Does the country just go black? Does the country just go dark in terms of like all kinds of internet access, anything like that? I don't know the answer to that question. I hope the Taiwanese government knows the answer to that question, because this isn't like Ukraine where you're able to bring in Starlink devices from, ship them through Poland, through the West. No, it's an island. So what they've got now, they blockade tomorrow, that's all they've got. And are they ready for that? I don't know the answer. I hope they do.
That's a critical point there, Adam, and I think Taiwan conducts all these annual drills and exercises on a host of different types of trainings. But is there one on social and economic disruption caused by information blockade? Perhaps there's something to think about in terms of what Taiwan they need to start preparing in exercises and what it would do in those types in that particular contingency. Okay, all right. I'm a little bit past the original sort of promised 15 minutes, for our audience. But better late than never, right? So again, please raise your hands and as well as state your name as well as your affiliation. We don't have a mic, so just speak up and you'll be able to have the same. Sir, go ahead.
Thanks so much, Russell. Tom McDevitt, Chairman of the Washington Times. Thank you for this panel. It's excellent. I appreciate your summary of your key words there of scale, speed, and partnership. I also think you've shared in the last few minutes, I think there's a fourth, which is narrative or content in the battle for hearts and minds. And I'd love to hear any comments from you in terms of the ideological battle with PRC and the CCP. You might call it worldview, but it's a civilizational clash that's going on. And I do agree that we are behind in that area, but we have awesome potential. So what about content? What about narrative? General question, but as a media guy, that's what I'm most interested in.
Yeah, I think you brought up a point about sort of Taiwan presenting itself as an antithesis, to China, and that's sort of that brings up the ideological sort of component that perhaps you could address this question about content.
I think Taiwan's interesting because if there's any country that's received more content than Taiwan from the PRC, you name what it is, and it's in like they're able to use the same language. Like there's so much there, and yet if you look at pretty much every poll, the Taiwanese are moving further and further away from the PRC in terms of like ideology and identity and all those things. So there's something about that where the Taiwanese, I'm not saying they've been vaccinated or inoculated against it, but whatever they're doing it better than anywhere else. Because I do think if you look globally, whether you look at Latin America and Africa and Southeast Asia, the PRC messaging is really hitting home and it really is making a difference. And so there's so many lessons that I can't sit and distill them. And if I did, I'd be probably doing that every day. But there are lessons from Taiwan. I'm not saying Taiwan's perfect, but clearly what they've done is better than pretty much anywhere else. And so we need to figure out how to replicate that, even if obviously Tanzania is not Taiwan in terms of like the relationship with the PRC. And I know that's part of the issue there. But we're missing something in our messaging globally that is somehow effective in Taiwan.
Yeah, I wonder actually if I could chip in,
Yeah,
not
please
some plug, but I did publish a paper on this actually like last week, so very relevant. In looking through kind of Chinese national security strategists, military strategists, and how they're thinking about this question of what they call cognitive warfare. I think one important point to really drive home is that cognitive warfare is like the one warfare you can kind of conduct at any time, whether in wartime or peacetime. Like they say that very blatantly. It's not divided between the military and civilians. It's happening towards everyone all the time. So that's point one. Point two, especially post 2022, the national security scholars in China have clearly been taking lessons specifically from Russia's invasion of Ukraine. A lot of their scholarly work since then directly references sort of how Ukraine and Russia have approached the information space and how successful, I think they refer to as kind of Ukraine's narrative of difference has been internationally, how Ukraine has been able to kind of create this narrative that, we are different and separate from Russia. And that has really resonated with global populations. And I think a conclusion that a lot of these scholars are sort of drawing from that, and we can, assume is maybe kind of informing Chinese strategy in this space, is that a focus on kind of overt ideology is actually not, overt ideology and kind of a grand historical narrative might actually not be sort of the best paths to achieve influence in the broader cognitive space. And so, like I said, it's a content-driven world, and so just identifying sort of the narratives that people will engage with, and then identifying the ones within those that sort of align with your goals. So, for instance, in Taiwan's last election, Chinese state media weren't necessarily saying Taiwan should reunite with China. Well, I'm sure they were saying that somewhere, but that wasn't, the overarching narrative. There were a lot of narratives about how corrupt is the current Taiwanese government and how bad is our economy. And of course, that has nothing directly to do with China's sort of ideology towards Taiwan, but it achieves the same end.
So in doubt.
Yeah, exactly.
How do we get your paper? How do we get your paper?
Oh, yeah, you can find it on our website at scSP.ai, I think. But yeah, for anyone who's interested.
And yeah, please, Jai. Yeah, please.
Questions, because I'm more European based, so I would like to share how what is China's narrative in Europe. Because when I participated in a conference in Balkans, and there's a report indicates that people in Balkan region, they see China more successful than Taiwan doing precaution measures during pandemic. They see that China is the best country to encounter COVID-19 in the world. So in Balkan, China has been investing a lot of propaganda budget. So when I went there, I see, okay, so Taiwan, maybe we don't really invest enough in the cognitive war. And also, I also read a paper about Nicholas Post. He mentioned the reputation security. Reputation for small countries is really a national security issues. We have to consider it as a tools to secure our international positions, and also how to land international audience. So I just respond to your question.
Great.
Hi, I'm McKenna Rollins. I'm at the Stimson Center. I work on Chinese economics and cognitive warfare. My question is, when the PLA conducts a military drill that's presented as it being in response to lies, speech, being pro-independence, how is that reflected in the Taiwanese civil society so that the society doesn't start to equate lies, speeches with a military response? And so what is the digital resilience response there that you would advise to kind of prevent that messaging from hitting home in Taiwan that lies pro-independence and more likely to spark a conflict between straight?
Is that addressed to anyone specifically? Anyone want to take that? The cognitive effects of the PLA military operations. Go ahead.
I think after Lai's speech, no matter people supporting PP, people will worry about his speech are a bit too they would cause some problems. So in Taiwan society, I would say people prefer politicians to do speeches not so clearly express their position, especially Lai is the president. So there are some discussions and worries after his speech, to be honest. But I see some social media posts where people would say they will try to interpret or trying to do they try to interpret the speech in another way, like to see like how it's they try to convince the supporters that this speech is not so extreme and they have other meanings behind. And some people will say, if we don't have it now, we will never know where it's Taiwan's position. And some other people will say, we would rather keep the tone as time when their discussions say. But I would say even the supporter of PPP will be back speech after.
It's gonna be here. It's John right here.
Hi, I'm Yo Hao. I'm working for a Taiwanese government think tank, PSET, to focus on AI and different governance. And I have two questions for SPB. I want to echo like your last point you made. You mentioned that we should provide access to AI models that cover like wider viewpoints or accurate information to support the value of pluralism, something like that. But I think I can agree with that more, but I think the challenge is how we can achieve that. Yeah, I mean, especially now we have AI models that mostly trained by the most Mandarin data sets that train our AI models now are mostly simplified Mandarin. Yeah. So my first question is, how we can like achieve that, especially which actors you want to highlight to take this job, like early transnational tech companies, big techs, or sovereign states, and also in Taiwan, we are developing like the one like models we want to train on by complicated traditional Mandarin. And the second question is, if you want to provide some kind of models, more robust, more reliable. The thing is, I think one thing we need to admit is the breakthrough of information technology. It not only brings opportunity to speak, but also the opportunity to overproduce information, and also like cheap speech. So that is something we need to address as well. So that people who want to address that issue, we might implicate somebody's free speech rights. So also the same question. So like which actors or what strategy you might suggest to address this kind of like AI generated harms? Yeah, and you can like share your thoughts in general or maybe more fit to house content.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of actually preempted one of my answers, which I was actually going to highlight the FIDO model. We actually had the developers at one of our events at CSP where they kind of debuted it for American audiences. And for those who don't know, this is a model that is sort of trained, specifically on traditional Chinese to sort of provide that fuller perspective of, I guess you could say, like a more democratic Chinese language AI model, kind of native to that context. And I can broadly agree with the need for that. I mean, I remember a time not long ago when I was using, I think it was probably Gemini. I was using it in Chinese and I was, kind of just like playing around, seeing what it would do. And I was trying to ask about Chinese president, and it kept saying my zong tong, like it was the completely wrong character. Like it was just referring to the wrong person, which, I can't necessarily offer answers as to why that was and what data was making it spit that out, but it like refused to give me the correct name of the Taiwanese president. And so I do think that there is, a need for maybe bespoke solutions in cases like that. And I think also in certain cases, those kinds of, smaller, specialized, good enough models can also have certain advantages when it comes to cost that make it easier for people also to use them, in different contexts when maybe it's more resource constrained or compute constrained location. So I agree with that. And your second question on AI generated disinformation and all of that, of course, take your point. I think people, especially at the outset of 2024, were very worried about this, right? We were all predicting like a flood of deepfakes and nothing would be real anymore. I think kind of the reality of what we saw is that people are really creative. Like people found lots of very different and weird and wonky ways to use AI to try to push certain narratives in ways that we didn't necessarily expect. That wasn't just tens of thousands of the same deepfake video posted by different accounts. I mean, I think, if you think about how we use social media, it is posting 10,000 copies of the same thing, even like the most effective way to achieve influence, right? That's not how people interact with content. So I think it's a place for concern because again, there were so many unexpected uses of it by unexpected actors in unexpected ways to push narratives we didn't expect. That happened in Taiwan, like right before the election, right? There was like this whole probably likely AI generated book about like the secret history of President Tsai Ing-wen and all of these 11 scandals, right? And so that was probably not something that was on anybody's bingo card for what people were going to use AI for, and yet it happened. And I think Taiwan's, civil society and government kind of responded well to that, so that was encouraging. But definitely something to watch in 2025 because people keep coming up with new ways.
Well, I apologize we were unable to get to all your questions, but we are past time now. Please join me in thanking our superb final announcement for an event that we are hosting tomorrow. Tomorrow we will be hosting the 27th National Security Advisor, Ambassador Robert O'Brien, who also chairs the GTI's Taiwan Policy Task Force. This will be an event tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. I think registration is still available at this time. So if you haven't already RSVP'd, you may do so on our website. And he will be talking about, U.S.-Taiwan relations in the next administration. All right. With that, thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event.